so many years. Everything is new for me. So this is a very, very sacred place. Many pastimes were performed here, and one of the main pastimes here was that. Have you all heard the story of Devahuti? How many of you have heard the story of Devahuti? Oh, less than half of you. Okay. So, Lord Brahma, this place is called as Kapil Dhara Tirtha. Kapil Dhara Tirtha is where Kapila Muni or Kapil Dev, who was the Lord himself, came as the son of Devahuti and instructed her in Sankhya Yoga. Have you heard of Sankhya Yoga? It's a numerical science about how many, there's 5 indriyas and then 5, it's complicated, sorry. My brain is not meant for that. Anyway, so Swayambhuva Manu is the son of Brahma and Devahuti was his daughter, so she was a princess. Imagine, Swayambhuva Manu is the king of the creation actually, in one sense. So, such a big personality, and she was his daughter. So, she was raised in a very lavish environment. She was a princess. It is said that she was so delicate that she never touched her feet on the ground. She always walked on flower petals. Even Sita, the description where even is described as Mother Sita also never touched her feet never touched the ground. They were always petals. And her feet were so delicate that even the rose petals that were kept so for her to keep her feet on, even they used to poke her sometimes. She was so delicate. Similarly, Devahuti was also a princess, and it is said that her feet never touched the ground. And being raised in such an environment, naturally, when you're raised in all comforts, all kinds of comforts, being the daughter of such a big personality like Swayambhuva Manu, it's not easy to live a very simple life after that. So, she was so beautiful. The description of her beauty is given in Srimad Bhagavatam. It is said that she was so beautiful when she was very young. She was not of marriageable age or anything. She was very young. She was so beautiful that when she would play on the terrace of her palace, demigods would be flying in their airplanes, and seeing her beauty, they would faint. Imagine, she's only 5-6 years old, and big demigods are coming just to see her, and they would faint seeing her beauty. So that's how beautiful she was. And when she finally came of marriageable age, so naturally when a father has a daughter who is of marriageable age, they think that we want the best bridegroom for our daughter. And what do they look at in a prospective bridegroom? That he's well settled, he has money, he has his own house. So will my daughter get all these comforts that she has grown up with? But Swayambhuva Manu, he's a pure devotee, he's a great personality, and he did not think that, my daughter should get all this. He would have liked it, but I'm sure he did not think that, because he was a devotee, he understood the importance of having someone marry his daughter who would definitely take her back to Godhead. So his goal was not to get his daughter married to someone who is materially, who has a lot of material wealth and beauty and all these things. And even Devahuti, she was so cultured, and she was a devotee herself. So she did not argue with her father, saying that, I have to get married now, so now you must find me. I'm a princess, so you must find me a demigod or a prince to get married to. Either get me married to an earthly prince, because she's Swayambhuva Manu's daughter. Earthly prince is also below her, actually. So a demigod would have been more appropriate, but no demigods were good enough. Because Swayambhuva Manu is above all the demigods. So in the hierarchy of things. So Swayambhuva Manu thought that my daughter's husband should be someone who will definitely take her back to Godhead. At the end of his life, she must get liberated. So he did the most contradictory act. He approached Kardama Muni, who was in the forest performing tapasya. He was not someone who earned money. He was not someone who had beauty or wealth or anything like that. or any material possessions for that matter. He was just in the forest doing his tapasya. He was a great rishi, one of the biggest rishis of that time, and he had nothing. And being the king of the universe, he got his daughter. He approached Kardama Muni in the forest and asked him that, would you please marry my daughter? Kardama Muni agreed. And they just married her off in the forest. There was no pomp, no festival, no celebrities, no celebrations, nothing. Just the parents and the daughter went to the forest. They got their daughter married and they left. There were no three-day celebrities where everyone's taking pictures and dressing up. Nothing like that. They just went to the forest. They asked him, he agreed. They got their daughter married and they left. That's it. And she also did not argue with the father because she had faith that my father is a pure devotee and he knows what is best for me. So it's very hard to understand this in today's day and age, where we have so many material desires and we have so many expectations of how our married life should be. And we want the basic at least, food, clothing, shelter, that's basic. And then we want a little more than that, a little comfort, something. But her being a princess did not come in the way of her accepting whatever her father had got of best for her. So she accepted that and she completely molded her consciousness according to her new situation, which was living in the forest. There was no house, there was no hut, there was nothing, there was no food. She had to go picking food in the forest, roots, berries. You know how sadhus, hardcore sadhus, they don't do food, they just find roots and berries. And half the time they don't eat, they are so engrossed in their tapasya that they have no time for anything. So now imagine suddenly a young girl who's come from a huge palace is now in the forest. And she can't even tell her husband, "Arey, kam se kam khana to, utna to kama ke lao, khana kha sake hum." Nothing. He got married to her and he went back to his tapasya, into his meditation. And she served him so well. She did not question him. She did not remind him that, oh, you're married, get up and do something. Nothing. She just served him so well, so selflessly. She didn't spend her time combing her hair or decorating herself because there was no time. She just served her husband. And that's such a high ideal, we can't even imitate that. It's very hard for us to understand that. So for many years passed like this, and she completely devoted herself in the service of Kardama Muni. And by doing that, he was so engrossed in his meditation that he completely forgot that he was married. After many years, she lost her beauty. She became very thin because there was no food. And she served him so well. She used to, clean his place. She used to bring flowers for his puja and bring berries, fruits for him to eat. Not taking care of herself in that way, just enough to maintain her body. And many years passed, and she actually became very emaciated, and she became she didn't look like herself anymore. She just lost her beauty. And then one fine day, Kardama Muni was very pleased with his tapasya, and he opened his eyes. And he realized that someone has been serving him all these years. How is all this happening? So he just saw her sitting there. And he asked her, "Who are you?" He actually forgot he was married. He asked her, "Who are you?" And she said, "Swami, I'm your wife. You married me this many years ago." "Oh, I'm very pleased with your service. So, what do you desire?" She said, "What will a woman desire?" She said, I want a child." So he said, "Okay, now, just to, he was so pleased with her service that he thought that he should fulfill her desire. Instantly, he created a palace in the air, and it was so big and so beautiful that just by thinking he created the palace in the air, which had lots of gardens and rivers and all these waterfalls, and it was extremely beautiful, wealth and maid servants, something that she didn't have in the forest. She grew up with maid servants. She didn't have to lift a finger, literally. And she lived in the forest for so many years, and he instantly created that palace, and just by touching her, he just touched her, and instantly her youth was revived again. All her beauty came back. He himself was not very good to look at because, you neglect your body, all his beard and all his jata had grown. her hair become jata. So he became beautiful himself, and she also became very beautiful by his power of tapasya. And then they both lived in that palace in the air for many years. And naturally, there were, material pleasures were there. There was wealth. All that wealth he created just by thinking, by the power of his tapasya. And the first time they came together, they had 9 daughters. And each of them was a gem, just like her. Like how chaste and faithful and devoted she was, each of their daughters became like that. Like Anusuya, Arundhati, like that, there were 9 daughters. And they all were married to the greatest rishis of that time. So, when it is said that this is the purpose of Grihastha Ashram, to create children who are such great personalities that they will definitely go back to Godhead, and they will also create children who will be inspiring for others, and they themselves will also go back to Godhead. So, after that, they had no son, they had 9 daughters. So, obviously, they wanted a son. So, after that 9 daughters, a son was born. When they say that when devotees have children, the children are also devotees. They are demigods waiting to take birth in the family of devotees so that they can take their spiritual life ahead. But they were so purified. Kardama Muni was so pure in his consciousness by the dint of his tapasya, and he became so pure by serving him that when they had a son, the Lord himself appeared. They were so pure that the Lord himself appeared as their child. It's not very easy for the Lord to appear as anybody's children like that. Everyone desires, but it's not possible. Only people who perform a lot of tapasya, like Devaki and Vasudev, Prishni and Sutapa, we have these examples of certain couples who perform tapasya for many years to have the Lord as their child. So, it requires that much tapasya to have the Lord as your child. And because they were so pure in their consciousness, the Lord himself appeared as Kapil Dev. And as soon as the son was born, Kardama Muni left that aerial palace and he went back to the forest. And then Devaki thought that, okay, what will I do here? So she also came back to the forest. But he had left. So she raised him alone in the forest. And naturally, she knew that he was the Lord. But as a baby, she did everything a mother would do, like clean him, bathe him, all those things. But at the age of 5, she made him her guru, and she inquired about the purpose of life. And 5-year-old Kapila Dev instructed his mother. He became his guru and instructed his mother. And she submissively inquired, what is the purpose of life? And he instructed her in Sankhya Yoga, which is connected to Bhakti Yoga, obviously. It is instructed by the Lord himself. But it's very scientific and technical. And she was already pure in her consciousness by so much tapasya and serving her husband and all that. But after hearing from her son, the Sankhya Yoga, she became even more purified. And when she left her body, she became Kapila River, which is still there. It's still there. So Kapila River is still there. So Devaki became the Kapila River, and she's still flowing. And then she meets Godavari at some place, Tapovan. Right. So this is the place where Kapila Dev he performed his childhood pastimes, and he also instructed his mother in Sankhya Yoga. So this is a very sacred place where the Lord himself, his lotus feet have touched the ground here. So we are very fortunate to be here. This was one of the pastimes that is performed here. The other pastime this was in Satya Yuga. Now, this place is even more sacred because more pastimes have been performed here. So in the Treta Yuga, when Hanuman was attacked by Meghnad and he was injured, and then they had called that Hanumanji had gone and got that doctor from Ravana's, from Sri Lanka. So he was not ready to come, obviously, because he felt that, I cannot be helping the enemy soldiers. So he was not willing to come. So Hanumanji picked him up to this old building and he brought him here down. Imagine being lifted to your entire house. And he said that, please do something, But for a doctor, it is said that they don't see who is enemy and who is from our camp. For a doctor, their job is to save someone's life. So he agreed to save Lakshman's life. So he told him that there is only one herb that can save Lakshman right now, because Pashupatasra is extremely dangerous, and if Lakshman does not, if the medicine is not administered on time, if the sunrise takes place, then he cannot be saved. So he said, you have to go and get that one herb from the Himalayas. And going to the Himalayas from Sri Lanka, who else can do it? Only Hanuman can do it. So this was emergency. He had to finish all of that in one night. And the medicine had to be made and administered before sunrise. So he's flying towards Himalayas, and there he goes there, and then he sees all these herbs. He doesn't know what to pick because he's a monkey. He's not a doctor. So all these herbs are shining, and what happens is, as soon as he goes there, because they are divine herbs, they generally have an effulgence coming out of them. But as soon as he went there, they all closed their light. So now he doesn't know all the more what to pick. So he just picked up the whole mountain. And he was flying. And now he is in emergency. He has to get back on time. But on his way back from there, Bharat saw some monkey flying in the mountains. He was like, what is happening? So he thought some demon or something. So he shot an arrow. And naturally Hanuman got hit and he fell. And then he asked him, who are you? What are you doing? What are you doing with this mountain in your hand? So he told him that this has happened. Ram has, Sita has been kidnapped, and he told the whole story in short. And Bharat was, first of all, Bharat is away from Ram. He's waiting for him to come back. He doesn't know where he is. And then he's hearing all these things that Mother Sita has been kidnapped, and Lakshman is hurt. And I'm taking these herbs back so that the medicine can be administered. So he said that, please go fast. Please go fast. So then Hanuman starts flying again. And then on his way back, he meets a demon. Now, this demon had been sent by Ravana himself, because they have spies everywhere. So Ravana must have found out that Hanuman has gone to get some herbs for Lakshman. And there was a demon called Kalaneni who was sent by Ravana just to distract him, just to kill time, so that he doesn't reach before sunrise. He changed his form. He took the form of Brahmana, and he started, he tried to stop Hanuman and say that, oh, take some rest. You're doing so much. You've already done so much. You're carrying a huge mountain in your hand. Your hand must be hurting. And you fought for so many days, and you're so dedicated to Lord Ram. Please take some rest. You deserve some rest. And Hanuman had no time for all this. He knows he has to get back on time. So he understood, because the way he started talking, quoting Shastra and deceiving him. So Hanuman is very intelligent. So Vidyavan, Guni Ati Chatur. So he understood that this is a demon, and he's trying to trick him, and he's trying to waste his time. So this place is also called as Kavani or Kavaneni. So that came from Kalaneni. That name changed over time and became Kavani, because Hanuman killed Kalaneni here. When he was killing Kalaneni, there was a Gandharvi in that lake. There was a lake, and she was cursed to become a crocodile. So she tried to attack Hanuman, and then Hanuman delivered her. So in spite of being in so much emergency and urgency, he had to get back. He had no time. Still, pure devotees are like that. Wherever they go, even if they are in difficulty, they try to benefit others. So Hanuman understood that he killed the crocodile, and then that Gandharvi came back to her own form. She got her own form back, and she thanked Hanumanji for delivering her and delivering her from that curse. So in one night, Hanumanji managed to do all of this. He went there, he picked up the whole mountain, he met Bharat, told him the whole story. On his way, he killed a demon, then he killed the crocodile also, delivered her from the curse, and then he was on his way back. Then he went to he reached Lanka, the medicine was made and administered, and Lakshman's life was saved. He did all of this in one night. Bolo Hanumanji Maharaj ki Jai! This is the place where he killed Kalaneni and delivered that Gandharvi. There's also one more pastime that took place here. So, right. So before Hanuman went to Sri Lanka, Lord Ram and Lakshman came past through this area, and Sita had just been kidnapped, and they had not yet met Sugriva. Only Ram and Lakshman, these two brothers, were roaming around in the forest, and Ram was pitifully crying. Now imagine the Lord. He's Abhiram. He's Atmaram. He doesn't need anyone else to make him happy. He's pleased within himself. He's the source of all happiness. Such a personality is lamenting like a human being. He came in the form of human being. So he was actually crying so pitiably that even the creepers and the trees and the demigods who was watching him, they were feeling very bad, that the way he was crying, like, my Sita, where are you? He was literally talking to the creepers and the leaves and asking them, have you seen my Sita? Have you seen my Sita? Imagine just two of them alone in the forest, roaming around. They don't know where to look. They don't know where to go. They're just roaming around asking each tree and creeper, where have you seen my Sita? Have you seen my Sita? He was crying and crying and crying and wailing. And Lord Shiva and Mother Parvati were passing from above. And Mother Parvati said to Lord Shiva that, you say this is your Lord? Just look at him, the way he's lamenting. Are you sure this is your Lord? Really? I thought he was detached from all these things. No, but he's just performing his pastime. Lord Shiva said, he's just performing a pastime. Just watch, wait and watch. She said, no, but how can this be your Lord? How can he cry this much? Crying to one limit, feeling sad, oh, wife is lost, whatever. Leela. But this much? How can he cry this much? Only human beings cry this much. See, but he has come as a human being, so he's just performing his pastimes. No, but I don't believe it. I won't test him. So she took the form of Sita. And she came to the earth. And Lord Ram was crying, Sita, where are you? And he was fainting. And Mother Parvati in the form of Sita said, oh my Lord, I'm here. Look, I'm here. Why are you crying? I'm here. As soon as Lord Ram saw Sita, all his crying stopped and he paid obeisance to her. Because he knows. And then Parvati ji understood that he's just performing a pastime. So then Lord Shiva also came to the earth and he said that, see, I told you, he's just performing a pastime. So because Mother Sita wanted to test Lord Ram, Shivji also came to the earth. So this land has been purified by the lotus feet of Ram, Lakshman, Shiva, Parvati and Hanumanji. So it's a very, very sacred land. So we are very fortunate to be here. So it is said that because Hanumanji has performed so many pastimes here, in the history of Maharashtra it is said that Ramdas Swami, have you heard of Ramdas Swami? He was a very great saint of Maharashtra, amongst others. So he instructed Shivaji Maharaj to establish temples of Hanumanji here, because at that time they needed the strength to fight against the Mughals. So Shivaji Maharaj established 20 places where the sadhus could reside, like ashrams. They were called Viramti Peeth or something like that. And 20 ashrams were established, and he said that everywhere in Maharashtra you should establish temples of Hanumanji, because Hanumanji is the one who protects. So on his order, so many Hanumanji temples were. You see in Maharashtra everywhere there's a Hanuman. Every corner you find a Hanuman temple. So they were all established, and it is said that, have you heard of Jnaneshwar Maharaj? So him and his brothers and sisters, they say that they are considered as the incarnations of Pradyumna, Anirudh, Sankarshan and Vasudev. So him and his brothers and sisters they are considered as incarnations of them. So we won't go too much detail into their story because it's a very long story. But it is said that one time when a Brahmana's son he had died, Jnaneshwar is known to have done many miracles to help people, and he also wrote the Gita in Marathi language so that people could understand. In those days, people could not understand Sanskrit. So for the benefit of the common people, he translated that to Marathi in their dialect. And he also helped a lot of people, like a lot of miraculous things he has performed. So one of the things was that when a Brahmana's son had died, he put water from the Kapila river into his mouth and the son became alive again. So there are many stories like that which are performed here. The pastimes are performed here. So this was the importance of this place in short. Very fast forward because we need to go. Anything else? You want to miss out anything? Add something. So we are in a very sacred place. Thank you very much. You can ask them. Maybe that could be the lake. That lake doesn't exist anymore, but like symbolic. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.